Hello and welcome to Homeschool MBA, where we talk about different management business administration topics. Thank you for being here. Let's get started. So the agenda today is project planning process. We have created a one-page slide which goes over the 5 key parameters of a project planning process. The first one is develop work breakdown structure. Number 2 is develop the project schedule. Number 3 is organize resources. Number 4 is optimize best alternatives. And number 5 is risk management plan. Hello, Professor. How are you doing? Let's talk about project planning process.
I'm okay. Work breakdown structure. Now that is an important element of project planning. That is where you systematically analyze the work to be done and you create objectives out of it, and then you also identify deliverables. Now, deliverables are always measured in terms of time, material, and cost. Similarly, we identify the activities to be performed by whom, that we say that who will do the work. That means the responsibility or the ownership of activity that will be performed by various members of the project team. And this responsibility is given to on the basis of right person for the right job, because you would need some technical people, and then you will need some software specialists, and you'll need supervisors, and things like that. So we allocate the activity according to the ability, experience, and qualifications of the workers. And before we actually allocate the activity, we discuss the activity with them, and we ensure that they are willing to perform that activity. So once they are willing to accept that responsibility, it develops the ownership of the decision. So once the employees own the decision, so they do it like their own job, so they feel satisfied. What resources are required for each task? Now, that is, uh, we are talking of setting smart objectives, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. And that is where we talk about the technical resources or the financial resources and the human resources. Then we also plan the budget for this purpose. And while planning the budget, we make sure that there are certain, buffers built in to take care of the future risk, which could be, caused due to natural disasters or some accidents or unforeseen, situations. So normally that is about 10 to 15% plus minus buffer is to work out. Excuse me. Develop the project schedule. Now, scheduling the project is again a, a very, a very important activity for the project manager. In this case, the most important is the start date and the end date. Now, the start date is linked with the raw material or the resources that you are going to organize, and you set the people right, and then once you are sure that everything that is required for proceeding further is available, then you fix the start date. And then the end date, you work out that how long the project is going to take place, and that can be determined if you have done such project in the past, so you would know that how much time did it take. That's why we say that keep the record of project after you have completed. So maybe that as a project manager, you have completed number of projects in the past. So that will help you to, fix the end date. When are specific resources required? That is interconnected activities. Now, there are three different types of activities in project management: independent activity, interdependent activity, and interconnected activity. Independent activity is which is not linked with any. Like, for instance, you are building a house. Now, let's say, digging bases, also bases, are collecting material, are organizing human. So that is an activity which is independent. It is not connected. Interconnected activities, when one activity is required for the other activity. Like, for example, if you are raising the walls, then you need to have the material like bricks and cement and sand and things like that. So what you have is that all those activities of collecting the raw material is connected with raising the walls. So that is the interconnected activity. And then is the interdependent activity. Now, interdependent activity is that one activity is an output for the next activity's input. For example, you cannot put the roof unless you have raised the walls. So that means that the putting the roof is interconnected or interdependent on walls. So that's where interdependent, there is slight difference between interconnected and interdependent. Interconnected, that they are necessary for each other, but interdependent, the other activity cannot start unless the previous activity is completed. Like, roof cannot be put unless the walls are raised. What are critical and time tasks? That is critical path method. That is the most difficult method, or the most difficult path. When we say critical path method, that is the most difficult path to complete that project. That is where you have to show your concern. Now, critical path in, let's say, making a house would be collecting raw material, collecting human resources, putting the walls, and putting all these activities together. So that we refer as critical path, because if the critical path is not managed properly, the project cannot be completed in time. What tasks can be delayed, or it is referred as independent activities? Like I gave you the example, there are a number of independent activities: collecting of raw material, collecting of human resources. With these activities, they do not affect each other. Say, for example, you need 1,000 units of cement. So, but you will not need 1,000 just at the same time. Maybe you can start with 100 and rest can be brought during the course of the time. That's what simple example can, explain this. How can the project be accelerated? Now, this is very important. The managers have to set phasing or milestoning. Now, phasing means three types of phasing: short term, medium term, and long term. And for every short term, you set a milestone that first phase shall be completed by so and so date, and make sure that it is completed. Make sure that raw material and resources are made available for the first phase, and then you meet the milestone. Now, for example, if you do not meet the milestone, you were supposed to deliver an activity by 31st of March, but you could not. Now, what you do is that you have the second phase from 31st March to, let's say, 30th June. So you overlap the activities of first phase to the second phase, but make sure that both the phases are completed on 30th of June. So that is also called overlapping the activities. And making sure that the end date is met properly. Then Gantt chart and task duration, that is estimation. Now, Gantt chart and other software are available which can really estimate the duration of each activity. When we say duration, we are talking of duration of activity. And the most popular technique is the Delphi technique. Now, in Delphi technique, you have, you give, let's say, proposal to your workers that what do you think that how long will that activity take? Say there are 5 people and everybody gives his own opinion. So what you do is the most likely you take it and most unlikely you delete it. Let's say 3 people said that it can be completed in 3 months, but one person said in 1 year. So that is most unlikely. So you delete that. So most likely you consider, and then you take the average, and that is where the estimation of the activity is properly done on the scientific basis. That's what we mean through Delphi technique. You estimate the duration of the activity. However, while doing that, you still keep the buffer zones in completion of that activity to make sure that your project is completed within time frame. Organize resources. There are different resources that are required to complete a project. The most important resource is the human resource. Now, human resource, there are workers, there are engineers, there are draftsmen, there are architects, and different types of people who are required um, at different times to complete that project. So you have to line them up and you have to make sure that everybody understands his responsibility and his role that he has to perform. Then you have to organize the financial resources. Now, again, financial resources are worked out and estimated through Delphi technique or through other, techniques available that how much finances are required. And again, you build in the buffer zones and then make sure that a proper estimate is made. And technical resources are like these days you have computer softwares and you have automatic, control systems and things like that. Optimize best alternatives. Now, direct, indirect, and intangible benefits. Now, best alternatives are again determined through, collective decision making and through voting and collectively decided that which one is the best alternative. And while determining the best alternative, you consider the direct and indirect and intangible benefits. Direct benefits are like, let us say, you will complete the project in time and whatever your profit margins are there, and you'll get it. Indirect, now, let's say value or indirect benefit is your repo and your, satisfaction of the client. And intangible again, the your image of your company would be recognized if you finish the work within time, and you know you will increase the reputation and prestige of the company in the market. Then the last but not the least, risk management plan. Now, there are 3 different steps in. Assume risk means that uh, judge various risks. What are the risks that you are like risk of disasters, risk of unseen situation, risk of inflation, risk of accident, and things like that. So you assume all those risks, and then you make sure that such risks are covered or avoided, and you develop the techniques how to avoid that risk. Again, here in project management, you will see that buffer zoning comes for your rescue every time. Now, that is called manage risk or use external resources. Now, in this case, let us say that there are certain technical resources that you required, but that you will require at certain times in the project, not every time. So you don't have to generate your own technical resources. You can always use the external resources. Like consultants, like architects, like the computer experts. Whenever they are required, this is referred as just in case. JIC, just in case. That just in case you require, so you call them. So that is how I would say that this project planning process goes. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Professor. Very interesting talk. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Please like and subscribe to all our social media. Thank you.